38 special wad cutter from a Snub. Was it really a better option back in the day versus the old lead round nose 38 special? So this test is going to mostly focus around that 38 special federal premium gold medal lead wad cutter match ammunition. I tested it in the 4-inch barrel recently. A lot of people requested to see that in the snub nose revolver. So we're going to test that through a snub nose revolver. And that got me thinking, you know, how would that really compare, you know, back to the law enforcement round that was pretty much the go-to back in the day, the 38 special lead round nose 158 grain. Well, a lot of people would say that, you know, they would choose wad cutters back in the day because they would cut a hole better, it would cause more damage, and they would just be a better option than a lead round nose or even a hollow point that won't expand from a short barrel. So a lot of people carried wad cutters and they said they were a really good option for them. Our premium wad cutter, our federal premium gold medal match wad cutter, is rated at 690 feet per second. It is a 148 grain wad cutter. Our lead round nose is a 158 grain lead round nose rated at 770 feet per second. So we are lacking quite a bit of power already as it is with that wad cutter. But it's supposed to, you know, really cut a nice clean hole. So we'll see how these do in my 2-inch barrel Taurus 605. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. So we're going to go into plain clear ballistics to see what the best potential of those cartridges are. And then I'm going to do a real world simulation, kind of, sort of. It's going to be a little bit more rigorous than my normal real world simulation. So I am going to have 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard after 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and then another 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard at the back to represent back ribs. And clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of flesh. So 3 inches and 16 inches is more like 1.5 inches and 8 inches of flesh. So I try to do my best to try to represent a human body as best as possible with, you know, the resistance that's going on with it. But when I was trying to look up, you know, what's the stopping power of wad cutters, is there any recorded data on that? I couldn't find that, but a lot of people were saying, multiple sources said this, well, wad cutter is good, but if the person's wearing heavy winter clothing, it'll stop it. Not that it'll slow it down, it'll stop it. So I got all kinds of stuff here. I got like 2 layers front and back of snow pant material. I have front and back layer of a, you know, polyester fill type sweatshirt, and then an arm from a cotton sweatshirt. So I'm going to fold that in half one more time like that, just to be absolutely certain we have enough extra winter clothing there for it to really be a challenge. So we'll do a plain clear ballistic shot with both of these, and then that real world winter clothing simulation test. And then I will shoot at the target to see what kind of practical accuracy I can get with these, see if there's a big difference in follow-up shots and recoil control. So let's get started with this test. All right, so I'm not going to chronograph the lead round nose ones because I chronographed those a week ago in a different test from the same box of ammo in this exact same gun. So that ammo was rated at 770 feet per second. In the past, I did test it through a 4-inch barrel, and I was getting 789 feet per second, a little bit above rated velocity. A week ago, when I chronographed the lead round nose through this particular gun, I was getting 692 feet per second. So I'm going to chronograph the wad cutters though. And I tested these a couple weeks ago, and I used the 4-inch Smith & Wesson 686, and these are rated at 690, and the Smith & Wesson 686 gave me 703 feet per second on average. So we'll see how close we get to 690 and 703 feet per second with our little snub here. So about 5 yards from the target. Let's see what we can get in our snub. Wad cutters. .620. 663, 658, 624, 620. So quite a bit below our rated velocity, at least 75 feet per second below, below our rated and below what we got in the 4-inch barrel. So not bad overall though, because I have ran stuff like Fiocchi wad cutters, 148 grain wad cutters through this, and gotten like, you know, 520 feet per second, something like that. So at least these are relatively powerful for what they are, relatively consistent. So let's hit our ballistics gel block and see how the lead round nose compare to a wad cutter. See if the wad cutters really do a lot more damage. All right, our shot in the plain clear ballistics is our best potential. No fabric in the way to clog a hollow point if there were a hollow point. Not going to be a problem here, but that thick fabric might have been a problem if I was using hollow points. And no rib simulation to slow down potential penetration. So first up we have our lead round nose, and then we have our Wadcutter into plain clear ballistics. So let's see what we get with our lead round nose here. All right, let's hit that with our Wadcutter. Let's go take a look. All right, so definitely a big difference going on there, and actually what I'm seeing with that Wadcutter is exactly what I got in the 4-inch barrel. I'm seeing no difference. It, like, the Wadcutter basically went into the second block in the 4-inch test and bounced back and stopped exactly at the back of that first block. So really no change versus a longer barrel. With our 38 special arced up, you know, I crouched down a little bit, get those shots, but I'm not aiming at an upward angle. It just coincidentally went up at that angle like that. And I've noticed they do that quite a bit whenever I've tested these. So it looks like there's more damage with our lead round nose in this gel block here, because it probably from tumbling. But when we actually look at the first 3 inches, I'm seeing something a little bit different here. Bottom is our lead round nose, the top is our Wadcutter. And definitely energy dumping more with that Wadcutter, because it's not wanting to slip through. You know, a round nose bullet wants to slip through, a Wadcutter wants to cut. So I'm going to say if you were on the receiving end of these, I would just about guarantee you'd feel that Wadcutter a little bit more. Now with our lead round nose, okay damage arced up, and this might have went a little bit deeper if it weren't curving, but I'll count where it's at still because it's still adequate. We are at about 13.5 inches of penetration, so not bad penetration overall. Now we look at our Wadcutter though, we got a total track goes to about 20.25 inches. So we had more consistent penetration for sure with that Wadcutter. That's very interesting. So let's put on that very heavy clothing barrier that will definitely stop that Wadcutter, according to the sources I read. And 3 more inches of clear ballistics, a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard, and then another 1/4 inch back here for front ribs and back ribs, and see how they do in our real world simulation. All right, our winter clothing barrier test. I got a lot of fabric there all folded up. I don't even know how many layers, but I can say it's a lot more than what I've ever worn. Got some Gorilla Tape on there on the front too, so that might actually change some things too. After going through that, we have 3 inches of clear ballistics and then a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 inches of clear ballistics, and then another 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard. So we'll see what we get with our lead round nose here. Let's see what this does. Huh. All right. Let's try to hit that with the Wadcutter. I don't like how it curves up like that. Makes me feel like I'm going to hit the bullet with the other one, but I'm going to try to make sure I don't do that. Let's see what we get with our Wadcutter here. Let's go take a look. All right, very interesting here. So let me hit it one more time without that winter clothing barrier and see if there's a huge difference there, because it looks like people might have been right here. All right, another Wadcutter shot here, and this time I have just 2 layers of sweatshirt material. See if that makes a difference. Let's go take a look. All right, so here's one of these things that I thought for sure I was going to be laughing at with everybody, that those people are stupid, but there's some truth to it. And I can see why there's some truth to that winter clothing, the way this impacted, because when I pulled this off, this first 3 inch piece here, you know, it's gone now, but there was a big chunk of that was deep into the gel line to pull it out. So it was dragging a bunch of this fabric into it. You can see here where I hit also on that tape with that Wadcutter. So yeah, there's definitely some truth to that. And our lead round nose here didn't have any problems at all. Our lead round nose went a little bit less deep, and that's just simply, you know, from hitting that rib simulation. It slowed it down. You know, generally I get about a 2-inch difference between having rib simulation there or not. That looks like similar to what I'm getting now. You know, I was getting roughly 13.5 before. Now I'm getting about 12 inches now going through our real world simulation. So I would say that fabric played no part at all in any of this here. Here's another thing I'm thinking that I'm probably going to see. I'm definitely seeing it. Is with both our lead round nose and our first Wadcutter, it went crooked. But with that lead round nose, it really didn't have a problem after going through that, going crooked and still getting good penetration. With our Wadcutter, that's a longer bullet. It's got less power. It's tumbling. That, you know, that fabric caused that to happen. Second shot with just fabric in the way, a little bit of that, no problem. So our Wadcutter penetrations now. Our first one that was limited by that heavy fabric there, camera parallax will make this look probably way off than what I'm showing, but we are right there at about, I'll give it 4 3/4 inches of penetration. So definitely very much under penetrating, and just changing that fabric a little bit. 2 layers, we got 15 1/4 inches. So adequate penetration with the Wadcutter, except through that heavy fabric, like what people were saying. Now, it didn't stop in the heavy fabric, like people are saying, but that's pretty much, that's close enough for me to say that's not very good there. That's not even close to enough penetration, because if you look at like 4 3/4, you're looking at maybe 2.5 inches, 2 1/4 inches, 2 inches into a real attacker. That's not enough penetration to really get the job done. So very interesting here. So I'm gonna, you know, I didn't think I was gonna say this, but I'm gonna say that our lead round nose is a better option between the both of these overall. Now, if there's not a lot of heavy fabric in the way, it's gonna cause that immediate tumbling and all that. I would say our Wadcutter is probably better because we got more adequate penetration. But yeah, through all scenarios here, looks like our lead round nose did better. Interesting. Let's pull these out of the block. We'll take a close-up look at them, and then we'll shoot our steel, see what kind of practical accuracy I can get with these and follow-up shot control. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets going through plain gel, our lead round nose and our Wadcutter here. Not really any deformation to those bullets at all, from what I can see. There's our lead round nose. And here is our Wadcutter. They just went in straight, did pretty well. And when we go through our rib simulation and our winter fabric clothing, things change up quite a bit here. When we look at our lead round nose, it actually bent that bullet. So I think hitting that fabric, that thick fabric, it caused that bullet to kind of go in a little bit skewed sideways, and it's going to hit that rib simulation sideways, but there's still enough mass and power there that it went to an adequate penetration depth. Now when we look at our first shot through our winter clothing and rib simulation, you know, it looks like part of that edge there caught, and that caused it to kind of tumble through, which severely limited its penetration. So, you know, the low velocity of these, you know, they're catching that fabric, and I think that's really what the issue is it's causing them to become unstable, and then they prematurely tumble, and then you get very severe underpenetration. But when we don't have that thick layer, what we actually got was straight through, just a couple layers of sweatshirt, and it mushroomed that, it mushroomed that out just a little bit there, just a tiny amount on that nose. So it acted like a pretty good defensive cartridge like that, or like that, but when we put that winter clothing in there, yeah, that's definitely its limitations. I was not expecting to see that at all. Not expecting for people to say something that sounded silly to be correct, but hey, they were. So that's a close-up look at those. All right, 14 yards from the target. Just gonna see what kind of shootability and recoil control I can get with these. See if I'm faster with one versus the other by, you know, just trying to hit the target as fast as I think I can and still hit the target without missing. So first up, we have our lead round nose, 14 yards from the target. See how this does for me. All right, not too bad. I got my Wadcutters in a speed loader. This is definitely a challenge to reload with the speed loader with the Wadcutters. Some people will say that they will carry Wadcutters, but then they'll have their reloads being a standard ammunition round nose of some kind or hollow point. Other people have told me they actually put 2 rounds of standard ammo in there so that those 2 will kind of guide, you know, the rounds into the chambers correctly. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It takes a little bit more time to get the Wadcutters in a speed loader the way they are. So see if these shoot any different for me. So those are significantly lower recoil and easier to shoot for sure. Let me back it up and see how they shoot from a little bit more distance. All right, 40 yards from the target. I'm just gonna see if I can hit the target, you know, with both of these, see if there's a big difference between, you know, the accuracy they give me at these distances. You know, this is just basic lead round nose, as where that Wadcutter is a match grade Wadcutter. I don't know if that'll make any difference at all, but we'll see what I get here. So here's our lead round nose. So the point of impact just a little bit left for me. I think I pulled one off the target to the left. So here's our Wadcutters. See if there's a difference. So those are going all over the place for some reason. Some went below the target, some went above the target. So I think partially what's going on is I think there is some stabilization issues with these in a snub nose. That could be, you know, part of the reason why we got some tumbling in our ballistics gel test. Just not very accurate. So I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say, you know, I think overall between these 2 options, our lead round nose is a better option here for self-defense. You know, people have said Wadcutters, you know, for decades. They've said, oh, it's better, they do better. I've never really seen any real evidence on that. You know, there might be some people that have used it for self-defense and say it's really good, but there's not a whole lot of data on them. In fact, that's where I got the winter clothing ideas, because I'm researching, trying to find anything on how effective Wadcutters are for self-defense. And the only thing I could find was like forums of people saying, well, it does better, and it's opposite threat better because it does. And that really didn't cut it for me for information. As where when I look at our lead round nose, there's a lot of data on that because it was used as a law enforcement load for a long time, even specifically this federal load. And the federal is what was shown on the stopping power charts, and it shows about a 49% one-shot stop from a 2-inch revolver, which isn't that good, but if you consider that like 22 long rifles, like 20%, 21% or something like that from a pistol, you know, 38 special lead round nose, 49%. What that basically means is that if you're to fire one shot, about half the time, somebody's going to stop doing what they're doing, and the other half of the time they're not. So it's better odds than, I guess, a pointy stick, but Not great performing. Now, I could not find anything, like I was saying, about the Wadcutters. The only thing I could find for information was kind of like the FBI load from a 2-inch barrel. And a lot of times from my testing, what I found is that load doesn't expand anyways. And, you know, velocities are generally upper 700s feet per second. And that's like 65 to 67% one-shot stop. And that semi-Wadcutter hollow point, it still has a semi-Wadcutter edge, which is part of the attribute to a Wadcutter. So I can kind of make an educated guess and say that I think a Wadcutter would be somewhere between a lead round nose and a hollow point 158 grain semi-Wadcutter, anywhere between 49% and 67%, probably closer to the lead round nose for stopping power. And it probably does stop thruts just a hair better than lead round nose, but again, I would just be speculating on that. I don't really know. It's very interesting here. And what I'm seeing here is that Wadcutters can be very, very unpredictable. And that's not really something that I want for a self-defense cartridge myself. You know, as we know, hollow points can be unpredictable as well. And sometimes you can get over expansion and not enough penetration. But one thing I am seeing with this lead round nose is very consistent performance. It's doing pretty much the same thing every time from every barrel length. It's going in as yawing a little bit, creating a little more damage than if we're just going straight and getting adequate penetration without over penetrating. From any barrel length, it's basically doing that. And having consistency and knowing what you're working with is definitely an advantage for having a self-defense cartridge. With the Wadcutters, yeah, I think they would do better under certain circumstances, but we can see from this heavy clothing barrier issue that I never thought I was going to see. Yeah, that can play a big part here in that, and it's not going to be particularly consistent if you were facing that type of issue. Now, if you're in Florida and you're thinking, oh, for whatever reason, I can't carry hollow points, even though they're legal there, and I'm going to carry a lead round nose versus a Wadcutter, what am I going to carry? Well, I guess maybe a Wadcutter would make more sense, but if you're like in New Jersey where you're not supposed to be able to carry hollow points, I think they can use FTX bullets now, which are effectively the same thing. But just going back, just for argument's sake, saying that, oh, you know, we're in New Jersey, we can't carry hollow points, people wear coats. Yeah, you'd probably be better off with that lead round nose. So interesting test here today. Very surprised in what I saw. So interesting. That's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.